So today I'm very excited because I have a good friend, Tracy Beeson, on the show today. And me and her met actually through a BNI, and uh, she mentioned something that she used to be a lighting designer. And uh, so we clicked off because I'm in the lighting design industry. And of course, there's not very many lighting designers around in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So I was like, what? No way. So we met up and talked about lighting and how to educate people around here and things that we could do with it. And then we started going to the same church actually, and now Tracy and my wife Jen actually hang out and do like a fire circle together, which with other women, which is super cool. So uh, super excited to have her on and grow our family's connection together as we hang out and see what we can do here. And Tracy, if you don't mind talking to the listeners and just telling them a little bit about yourself and how you came to do what you do.
Sure. Yeah. First, thank you for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here. I was really excited when I met you at my BNI meeting because I had actually come from 13 years working on some various different lighting programs, mostly DOE related. It had been this big part of my life as I went to school for architectural lighting design. And then I got into the energy efficiency of lighting, LEDs, kind of market transformation kinds of efforts that I worked on for over a decade. And so I love lighting. I love design. I love beauty. And I feel like beauty is enhanced with lighting. You can take a very ugly space and make it look fabulous with a good lighting design, or vice versa. You can take a really beautiful space and just ruin it with bad lighting. So
Totally.
love that aspect of it. But as life happened and I got quite a few years behind me and a couple of kids and lost a spouse, I started to realize that I wasn't really showing up in the world as my best self. And so I started doing a lot of inner work, healing the inner child, really hitting different counseling modalities, different therapies to release trauma, move through a lot of limiting beliefs that I had held for a really long time, since childhood, actually. And so I ended up, as I discovered more and embraced myself more and who I was, I I came across this modality called Psych K, which actually helps you shift your limiting beliefs on a subconscious level. So we work directly with the subconscious to reprogram anything that's been limiting you in your life. And it has been a powerhouse for me in overcoming all sorts of different challenges that I've dealt with for my entire life, negative thinking, all sorts of different negative cycles that I self endured and self created and endured. And then I realized after learning to accept my skill set, I had spent so many years trying to be a good engineer, write good technical reports, and those just aren't my strengths. And so, in as I learned about myself, I learned to accept the things about myself that make me uniquely me. And one of those things, one of my top strengths is positivity. And so this modality I use is really about taking the negative, taking the limiting beliefs that people carry on a subconscious level, and to transform them into the more positive, affirming, and empowering beliefs. And I do that using this modality that I mentioned, Psych K. And we just rewire and reprogram those limiting beliefs to be empowering. And it really helps to shift everything. It's, I'm sure we'll go into detail, but that's essentially the heart of what I do now is help support others in that self acceptance and discovery journey that I have been going through these past several years.
That's great. Yeah, that's so awesome that it's like whenever you seem to face challenge, then you're forced to either give in or rise above it. And it sounds like you had a very, very challenging experience. Then you're facing it and overcoming it, well, integrating it and pushing against those challenging beliefs. And uh, so maybe for the person out there who's kind of like wondering what this is, it's I think what you're referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, is like the self-talk that we have in our head all the time, and we're not even maybe aware that it's there. When you say subconscious, we're like,
Yes.
oh man, I can't do this. Man, I'm just not a good. I'm not sociable. I'm not a people person. I'm worthless. Some people even say that.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yes, all of that, the inner talk, the self critic is what, when I have a new client sit down with me, I ask them, what does your inner critic say? Because if we're able to identify the negative self talk that we have, then we're able to identify the limiting belief, which, just like you said, enoughness is one, across the board. Men and women struggle with, I'm not enough of a good mom. I'm not enough of a, I'm not a good enough wife. I'm never going to be enough. I'm not smart enough. I mean, you name your enough. And that's essentially what we were told as children. A large part of in fact, the subconscious is developed before the age of 6. And so we, as young, impressionable children, are raised by adults, and we have these interactions with adults who, at the time, we think they are all knowing and all wise. Um, of course, we grow up to later realize, oh, these adults had their own traumas that they dealt with, and they were imperfect in their own ways. But unfortunately, by that point, the damage is done. We hear that, in order to be loved, you need to be good. Good. You need to be quiet. You need to be respectful. Children are meant to be heard or seen and not heard. All
right,
of these kinds of things we take into adulthood, and often we build an identity around, I'm the good girl. I don't stir up any chaos. I never create any sort of conflict. That's one that I struggled with. And ultimately, that doesn't serve me, because if there's some issue in the world and I have been programmed to keep my mouth shut and not create conflict, I'm not speaking up for my needs. And that's a problem, because that is not going to serve me in the long run.
yeah, you need to get people need to get comfortable with conflict in a way that it's natural and a normal part of life and how to process that. I
Yeah,
agree.
conflict is a great opportunity for growth. As
Yeah,
I've grown and I've learned, and what I share with my clients now is, when you have something that stirs you, when there's emotions, that's your body telling you something is out of alignment. And so don't stuff it, don't ignore it. Pay attention, ask questions, get curious, and say, why do I feel this way? And then when you're able to actually identify why it is you're feeling that way, then you're able to take action. And you need to have the self confidence to be able to take action. And I believe that confidence largely comes from self trust, trusting yourself to do what you intend to do.
yeah. So almost in a way, sounds like even teaching your kids from an early age too to that's okay to speak up for yourself because they don't necessarily know how to communicate their needs, right? So we need to help show them that. And
Yeah, I'm definitely, I,
it's a work in progress, right? We're learning.
man, and I feel like a large part of my healing journey didn't actually happen until my oldest three were, I guess my oldest two and maybe my third were already above 6. And so by that point, I had already unintentionally, just like every parent does, and this is something that I work with a lot of clients on, is your parents did the best that they could for you. They weren't, like, I don't know of any parents who intentionally try to harm their kids. I'm sure there's those people out there. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people that show up with good intentions, meaning to do their best. But unfortunately, their best causes harm for the child. And so what happens then is the kid internalizes it. They grow up, they do it for the next generation. This is the generational trauma that, you've heard about and that you've seen playing out in our society. And so I have been trying to help my oldest kids break the cycles that I helped create, right? As I've learned and grown and said, oh man, it is okay to feel emotions. You don't need to be quiet if you're, like, crying's okay, expressing your anger's okay. We just need to find healthy ways to do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It almost seems like at an early age, and even our parents, you're like just put in this jar and like shook, and then you're like bouncing back and forth and just reacting to everything. And those are unpleasant reactions. People don't, so they tell you don't act that way, and you don't really process it. It just gets buried down, right? They
Yeah.
say don't look at it, just do those, do something else, always be happy, right? Or something like you're supposed to always be happy, but
Yeah.
that's impossible task. But
Yeah.
almost in a poetic way too, you became a lighting, you're in the lighting field, lighting designer, and then I think there's something with the inner light clarity, which is your business and your, because this all this trauma stuff, right? We don't want to ignore it. We want to bring the light of awareness onto it. And once you become aware of the behavior or the reactions that are happening, you can realize that's not your fault, but you can do something about it, right? And
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I encourage people to take charge of their own lives. That's honestly the first step of bringing your shadow self, if you will, into the light, right? And I love all these analogies in psychology where
yeah,
yes, I came from architectural lighting. And so I was all about the external light and lighting spaces, but then realized that the brightest light is the light of the people, right? Like, and I did kind of dabble in that in the lighting space, like lighting and productivity. They say if there's daylight in the space, then you
yeah,
actually are more productive. That's kind of, if you actually look at the research, it has a lot to do with views and other things.
right,
Um, but essentially, bringing to light your hidden parts of you is the number one way to actually address any sort of trauma. Is you have to own it, right? You have to admit, like, I struggle with this. This is a negative thought pattern that I have. And like I said earlier, you want to get curious, like asking questions and being curious is the biggest gift that you can give to yourself and your family, because it's a way of practicing non-judgment. We don't want to judge ourselves or others, right? We don't have all the information. And so when we start judging, then we start to feel superior. And essentially, everybody is on their own path and they are living their own lives and they are becoming what they are meant to become in their own time. And so I learned this early on, advice, unsolicited advice is like never welcome. So I used to, be able to tell people, oh, you should this, you should that, you should that. 0% of the time was anybody interested in hearing what I thought they should do. Right. And I think a lot of people struggle with this
yeah.
because
I
it can
think
be
I'm in that
clear.
phase right now because I'm like
Yeah.
seeing all this, like I feel like I'm coming open into the world and I'm like this, there's this like, wait, we can actually admit that we don't, that there's other feelings. And then I'm like, wait, you guys need to be doing this. And they're like still way back there. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to not give them the unsolicited advice.
Right. Yeah. So living by example and showing up the best you can, people will start asking you for the advice. And when people ask for advice, they actually receive. But if it's unsolicited, then nobody hears anything. So I've really learned over these past couple of years, as I've been working one on one with clients, to just plant seeds everywhere I go, share the message when
Yeah.
people want to hear it, um, but not pressure anybody because everybody's on their own path and they are not going to be receptive to anything that I say or bring to the table until they're ready. And they
Right.
will be when their time comes.
Do you think part of that is from like the kids are growing up like parents, oh, stranger danger, don't talk to anyone else too, and then like you close off like think everyone's a threat when really, you can't. Someone had uh not stranger danger, but strange behavior. Watch out.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes.
Yeah,
Because stranger danger just, hey, it divides us, right?
yeah,
Like if you don't know somebody, then they're bad. The majority of shady things that happen are actually with known people, right? So it's not
right.
about the stranger, whether or not you know the person or not. It's the behavior you need to be aware of. And if anybody's ever telling you, like, hey, don't tell your parents about this, red flag, that's strange behavior. And so that's really important to teach your kids. I mean, all of this fear-based parenting, I'm just not in alignment with, right? And this is what I work with adults on too, like fear-based goals or any sort of anything that's coming from a place of fear, you are forcing what you want or what you believe should be, right? Expectations you mentioned. Expectations are the who said it and what did they say? It was Stephen Covey. I was just reading Seven Habits the other day. And expectations are, I wrote it down. It was so good. It's the seed of disappointment, is essentially what he said, right?
Oh, yes.
You are, when you set expectations, and there's that Lego song, right? Lego movie 2, unrealistic expectations. It's
Oh, nice.
hilarious, but it's absolutely true. When you have these expectations that can't be achieved, you are setting yourself up for massive disappointment. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I think it's having expectations around what you think should be
Hmm.
happening or what you think people should be doing
Yeah.
um, is different than expecting how people should be behaving, right? Because that's a boundary discussion, right? Like there are certain ways that you're willing to be spoken to or touched, and when you are communicating those needs and setting those safe boundaries and enforcing them in a loving way, that's really powerful, right? That's not like setting unrealistic expectations like somebody should go to college and have their full-time job and be married with a child by the time they're 25. That
Yeah.
isn't the path for everybody, and so you don't want to project any sorts of things that you think should be happening in other people's lives. I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of energy worrying about others and what
Mhm.
they should be doing instead of taking that energy and focusing it inward on what they can be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, it's almost like, yeah, there's so many points you could go there, but it seems like with the kids, there's like a developmental stage where you are like helping them figure out certain things and you're protecting them, but then along the way as they grow, you're teaching them how to think, not what to think, right?
Absolutely. Yes. One thing I see with older young adults, older kids, teens, I work with all ages. I've worked with clients from goodness, I think I had a session with a 4-year old.
Oh yeah.
Um, it was interesting. I feel like we got a lot of work done, but continuing to see him didn't make a lot of sense because he didn't contribute a whole lot. So I kind of worked on everything I could do without a lot of his input. And then I think I've had a client up in the mid 80s. So anywhere in the entire span of life, I'm able to help people identify what their limiting belief is and what that struggle is and make that shift. Um, but as far as kids and young adults and learning to make their own choices, um, it is so incredibly important for in order for people to be self-motivated, to feel like they're in control of their own lives. So when kids have been told, this is what you're going to do, this is who you're going to hang out with, this is what time you're going to be home by, all their lives, and then all of a sudden they're 18 and their parents are like, okay, go be an adult.
Yeah.
They do not have the skills, right? So the approach that I'm taking, and this is a fine balance of not giving them too much freedom. My kids are still pretty young, but letting them make their own choices. And even from like the age of 2, you've got a strong-willed 2-year old, you don't say, here, put on this shirt. You say, would you like to wear this shirt or this shirt? And then you
Right.
let them pick. And of course, that expands as they get older. Can I go out and do this with my friends? Sure. What time do you need to be back? And just putting a lot of the control and the decision making for their lives on them. I let my son fail part of 6th grade this year because it's not my responsibility to do his homework. He's not going to learn if I'm constantly on him about getting your homework done. Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done that? Um, and so one of his courses he did not pass. I think he still gets to go on to 7th grade. But if not, you know what? That's his deal. He gets to do 6th grade again. And I bet you the second time around, he's going to make sure those missed assignments get in because I doubt he's going to do it a third time. And
That's
that's
right.
just a lesson he wouldn't have learned if I were spoon feeding him and making
Right.
sure he got his stuff done. He needs
Right.
to learn to own that and to have that responsibility.
And that takes a sense of courage because there's almost this fear as a parent, like, oh no, I don't want my kid to fail. I don't want them to see this. But I think that's also a good place to learn is in home that failing is a part of life, and then that's how you learn. and
Absolutely.
grow.
Yeah. I love Brene Brown. I'm sure you've been exposed to all sorts of Brene Brown. She is absolutely amazing. She has a couple podcasts, and one podcast I was listening to, and I'm not going to be able to credit the person she was talking to, but they were talking about the origin of the word failure was actually from the early 1900s, when bankruptcy was invented. So that was failure was when you had to become bankrupt. You had to go bankrupt. That was the very definition of failure. And since then, we have taken failure to a whole new level. We talk about failing this and that, and what a failure I am. And oh my goodness, when I hear somebody say that they're a failure, I just slip them my card
Yeah.
because that is not what you want to believe and put out into the universe. Because if you are expecting that you're going to fail at every single thing you do, you will absolutely fail at every single thing you do.
Or
Um,
you're never going to try,
or
right?
you're never exactly right. So I always try to I try to remove failure from my vocabulary, which is funny because I just said it. Noted, I'm not perfect. Um,
Nice.
but also, mistakes is another one where
Yes.
it's just it's a bad choice, maybe that you wouldn't make again, but it is not the end of the world. It's an opportunity to learn and grow and pivot and make a different choice next time.
That's right. I love that because even on that early age, it's like I've been reading quite a few parenting books. Like the kid spills a little bit, right? And we're like, oh no, no, don't do that. Like they're learning that subconscious programming. Like
Mhm.
uh, it's okay to let them spill and make mistakes. And instead of me jumping in to correct them, if I can pause for a minute and take a breath, they're usually going to find their own way. They're going to figure it out and they're going to course correct. And otherwise, they're walking around the house like, I better not spill. And they're so terrified of it that they're going to barely just those like little subconscious signals that we're sending them all day long. I think it can start pretty small
Oh,
at the
absolutely.
very beginning.
Yeah. And I mean, trauma is, it's not about the event that happened, it's about how we internalize the event that happened. So even the same experience, experienced through different eyes of different people, can be completely run of the mill every day for one person, but the same exact experience can be highly traumatic and impact somebody else's life their entire life, because it's all about the perception. And that's huge. That is absolutely huge because, I mean, we certainly have traumatic events that would be traumatic for everybody in the world who experience them. But there
Yes.
are little things that can be very traumatic that, and I think also in our culture, just because it isn't traumatic for me doesn't mean I'm ever going to invalidate somebody else and say, oh, come on, that wasn't traumatic.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of gaslighting that goes on. Um, but it again, curiosity, right? Like, why was that so hard for you would
Yeah.
be a more appropriate question to ask. Because obviously if you're saying it was traumatic, then the thing to do is to believe you, and if I don't understand that, to ask questions in order to get a better feeling and understanding of why it was so difficult.
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't matter like necessarily what the other people think. It's you getting to that mental conclusion of, having that time and space for yourself and being patient with yourself, right? And trying,
Yeah.
it takes practice, I think, because yeah, again, we're not really used to that. So I really love that you're doing that and putting that out into the world. And it is so the Psych K is the treatment plan that you use in the program, and that's do you care to maybe expand on that a little
Oh,
bit
of
and how
course.
that
Yeah,
works?
it's an alternative therapy. And so it's actually been around since the 80s.
Okay.
Um, it is so you might have heard if you follow Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza at all, they do mention it occasionally. Bruce Lipton, especially, I'd say 50% of my clients are like, Bruce Lipton told me about this.
Oh,
What is
nice.
it? Um, because essentially his work that is the founding elements of epigenetics that are it's actually not necessarily our hereditary, it's the environment that we create within ourselves and within our bodies that determine our future. We can determine our future just by with our belief system. What we believe to be true actually becomes true, right? And so you've heard it called all sorts of different things. The secret, right? The law of attraction, um,
Manifesting.
manifestation, exactly. But essentially, what this modality does is I use muscle testing. So I communicate and understand what your subconscious thinks, not your conscious mind. I mean, I communicate with your conscious mind. You say, yeah, I think I love myself. But then I'll actually muscle test. I'll have you hold your arm out and I just apply a light pressure. And there's a whole communication protocol to make sure that you and I both feel what a strong response feels like and what a weak response feels like. And then I'll have you say a statement like, I love and accept myself exactly as I am. And some people will know consciously, they're like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
don't. And other people say, I think so. But then their arm drops, and then we realize there's something that can be done there. And so in the Site K container, there's a basic training, there's an advanced, and then there's a health and well-being program. Um, and the basic, you can learn just a couple balances, and you go a lot deeper with advanced, with some trauma processing and um, core belief stuff. And then the health and well-being is all about using your belief system to attain optimum health and well-being. But essentially, what we do is I'll just use muscle testing to determine what the most efficient and effective way for you to make that subconscious shift is. And then another beautiful part about Site K is there's always permission and commitment. So once we identify the best way to do it, then we'll say, okay, is this safe and appropriate? And we muscle test for that. And we will get a strong response if it is for in your best and highest good. And sometimes we get a weak response and we need to unpack why that isn't in your best and highest good now. Sometimes it's like a scaffolding we have to build. I've had to work with people on believing they're worthy of love before they can love and accept themselves on a subconscious level. So it's just a matter of getting that permission. I really love it. You can't use Site K for bad. It's literally just to empower and to heal. Um, and so then we determine which process we're going to use in order to make the shift most efficiently. And then it's essentially it's brain integration. So sometimes we're doing cross crawls, sometimes we're like tracing and doing eye exercises, kind of like they utilize an EMDR.
Hmm.
And sometimes we use breath as a means of reprogramming, but essentially it's using energy and your brain neurochemistry to get the shift in a very effective way.
Man, that's so cool. I feel like I'm learning a lot just hearing that. And I'm getting honestly quite curious myself because I know we've talked about maybe possibly I think that's something that I could benefit as well too, because just thinking and hearing that maybe for the listeners too, I imagine to prep them, is it get quite emotional when you're facing those beliefs and probably I
It
imagine some
certainly
tears
can
getting
be.
getting
Yes.
let out. Yeah.
Yeah,
If
there
you've
can
been
be some big emotions. I've got so I have an office in if we have local listeners, I have an office up in Hayden, Idaho, in the Inner Wellness Center. But Site K is also a modality that can be done remotely. And so you can go to the Site K official website, you can find a facilitator near you, or you can find somebody who does remote sessions.
and you
But
do remote sessions,
I do
correct?
remote as well. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
So, but if you're in my space, I've got a box of tissues and I encourage, like when a client gets to crying, I just tell them, let it out. This is proof that we're on the right path, right?
That's
Like
awesome.
if it hurts, if it's like a really touchy thing, then that means it's something that we need to, or we don't need to, right? You don't need to heal. You don't need to overcome your traumas. You can hold on to those as long as you choose to. But if you want to overcome those issues, bring in the tears means that we're on the right path. It means it's just a sign that we're getting to the heart of things and we're getting to the root cause. And I love getting to the root cause because we can just clear out the roots and then, we've got fertile ground to plant some really beautiful seeds.
That's such an awesome analogy there, even with the light combination and then
Right? Because
planting the
once those
ground and
seeds
weeding it
sprout,
up.
they're going to need
Yeah,
light.
that's right. Yeah, and then it's well, you can't change what you don't know. So if you're not even aware of it, it's in your subconscious. So obviously there's some work there. And unfortunately, it usually takes, hitting a big life event that you're like, okay, something needs to change here.
Yeah.
And then you're starting to do that work where I can resonate. I feel like I've done the EMDR I told you, and then it goes to things that I've repressed. Before you met me, I really struggled. I was holding everything in, and tears were just coming out. Like I think my body was trying to dump. You think about tears were put into us for a reason, guys and girls, right? I'm still here. My screen just froze for some odd reason, but
I hear
uh, they're there for a reason. Is to help release pressure and help process certain things. So I think it's 100% okay whether you're a guy or a girl to cry and feel that, and it's something that you got to work through. And uh, yeah, I think and then it opens up. You're just kind of, like you say, removing the weeds and then going to, uh, I love that you're planting new. How's the process work with planting the new? Does the client, do they write down what they want to believe? Do you help them out with that? Like, well, here's a good one, or
Yeah. So sometimes clients come to me with the list of affirmations that they've been repeating to themselves every day and every night 50 times for the past 4 years or whatever it is. And we muscle test and it's still not programmed on the subconscious level. So sometimes people know exactly what they want and we can just go for it. Other times people come in and they say, look, I don't know what's going on. And I study a lot of like neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I can treat it like a talk therapy session to pull out those limiting beliefs. Because if you get somebody talking, they insert the excuses that they give themselves. And so I'll just take notes and I'll jot things down. And then I'll say, okay, I heard you say that you just don't deserve to succeed or whatever it is. Right. And then we just transform that. One of the big questions in Psych K is what would you rather be experiencing? And so then if they're able to craft a sentence that's like, I live a life of success and abundance, fabulous. It's great because if it comes from them, then it's very meaningful. And so other times they're like, I have no idea. And so I'll throw a statement out there and then I'll, ask them for their
yeah,
feedback. Can we change a word? Can we make it more powerful? We want it to be emotionally charged and resonant. So the more that they can bring to the table what it is they want, the better it is.
that's awesome. And yeah, I think when I heard you, I think you said this, but like, people have those limiting beliefs of I can't do this or I'm a failure or whoever's listening, a lot of times you think you're alone in that, but I think with these statements, I think you're not. I think it's a very common thing that a lot of people face, right? And the version of success, I think we're sold by marketers maybe as like making a bunch of money,
Mhm.
big house, but really that's the exact opposite, maybe. And it'd be up to the client, of course, but success really and happiness really comes from within. And that, what you're talking about in the beginning, I think being able to love yourself and recognize that you're human and learning. And I think there'd be something powerful about that than like living and enjoying them lives. I mean, money's a tool, but that's definitely, I
Absolutely.
don't think that it's something that defines, your happiness.
No, not at all. And in fact, when you find your happiness in your money, your title, your job, your role, whatever that is, it can be taken from you, right? You can lose your job, you can lose the role, you can lose the money. And so if you've defined your happiness by that measure, when that thing is gone, so goes your happiness, right? But when you're able to find happiness within yourself and realize that my job is my contribution to the world, my role is the way in which I show up, the money is how I help support my family, how I fund my giving. There's lots of different things that money is used for. um, and if we have just really giving spirits and the flow of money out is essentially equal to the flow of money in, right? Unless you're out at the bar, the strip club, or buying drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to work quite as well. But if you are giving to the world, it's a karmic kind of feedback loop where the abundance that's going out is also coming in, and so there's just keeping that flow going, and limiting stagnation, because there's a lot of people that I work with. In fact, the majority of my clients, even young and old, um, we tend to touch on some sort of money mindset lack limiting belief.
Mhm.
Money is the root of all evil. Have you ever heard that before? Like,
Yeah.
this is not true. Evil people are the root of all evil, right? Evil people with money will do bad things. Good people with money will do good things. So it doesn't have anything to do with the money itself.
So
But
what
a
you're
lot
almost
of
hinting
people,
at too is there's like a shame associated, like, oh, if I make money, I'm a bad person, so I better
oh yeah,
keep
and
keep
I've
low.
worked with people on like, oh well, rich people are selfish.
Yeah.
No, we need to realize we can be good, selfless people and still have abundance and wealth. There's it's those limiting beliefs that really keep our thermostat set, if you will. If we're comfortable with $1,000 in the bank and we can't seem to get more than $1,000 in the bank, um, that is because that's what you believe you deserve. So getting to the root cause of that is going to help you to add a couple zeros to that and be able to say, okay, I can have 10,000 in the bank and it's fine. Maybe your thermostat ends up there and you might want to raise that and you might want to add another zero, and that's fine. It just depends how deep you want to go, because the more you heal, the more healing you can bring to the world.
I love that. That's awesome. And think about like what you put out into the world, almost in social, like you're talking about, like what you put out in the universe comes back to you, the giving spirit. Then you're saying the more you heal yourself, the more you heal the world. I don't know if I heard this. I don't want to take credit for it, but I know just the thought of what pebbles are you throwing in the water? Because each pebble has waves, right? Are you throwing them out?
Yes.
Then it has a ripple effect, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
that ripple's going to come back to you. I definitely believe and have seen that. And I think it's essential to take care of others, but you got to take care of yourself first, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is not taught in our culture. Our culture is we're taught to give. Selflessness is praised and honored.
Yeah,
And you cannot pour from an empty cup.
that's right.
Yeah,
No, you can't. Fill your cup up so it overflows into others.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. Man, I feel like I need to switch over from lighting designer to, because I feel I can talk about this uh, all day, I feel like, because it's super fun. Um, so for the listeners who are interested in inner light clarity and the Site K, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So I have a website. It's innerlightclarity.com. You can email me at innerlightclarity@gmail.com. I do have an Instagram handle, but I really, really enjoy working with people, much more than I enjoy marketing and social mediaing. So I have
Sure.
not been terribly active on there. But if you find me on there, I've got some old posts. Maybe one of these days I'll get back around to it. But the best way to reach me is on my website. You can actually set up a 15-minute free discovery call, ask any pointed questions you have. Um, and I'll be able to let you know if I think that I would be able to help you overcome whatever it is you're wanting to overcome. And yeah, you can just get any questions answered and see if we are a good fit, because this work it's vulnerable and it can be challenging. I've been through a lot in my life, which is a gift that I get to relate on a lot of levels to many different things that my clients are struggling with. And so, if you don't know if I would be able to relate or even grasp what your struggle is, grab a discovery call. Let's talk and let's see um, if there's some resonance here between me and you.
That's awesome. So the discovery call, they can find that right on the website. If
Yep, first button up at the top of my website. You can book a free 15-minute call.
cool. And then we'll make sure to have that your website link in the show notes as well as your Instagram handle. too.
Awesome. Thank you. And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I'll go out there and make a post.
Yeah, yes. Yes, I know it. The social media posts, I think my posts have fallen behind as well. For a while there, I was on track, and then yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to let that one go.
It is, unless you're inspired by it and love it. But like I said, I really enjoy when I got busy working with clients. That's where my heart is. That's why I do what I do. That's the only reason I even have an Instagram handle. So I would take the one on one client session and support any day over posting on social.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, well, I already see it's good, probably a good spot to end here because I already see my camera's glitching out again. I think beginning of a podcast hoster, I need to work on those technical issues, but I'll get it figured out. And Tracy, man, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and you're great to talk to. And I just
Thank
can't
you.
thank you enough for being on the show.
Awesome. It was my pleasure. Always a joy to talk. And yeah, anytime we can geek out about the inner light, the outer light. I love it all. So thank you so much for having me. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
Sounds great.
Keep listening to this guy. He's got lots of great stuff to say.
Thank you. Yes.